Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Veras from Brazil. I'm a doctor in social sciences from the Pontifical Catholic University of São Paulo. It's my great honor and pleasure to say a few words on the role of China as an emerging protagonist in the promotion of global peace and stability. Socialism or barbarism, the resounding phrase by Rosa Luxemburg, first voiced in 1916, still echoes among those concerned with the future of humankind. Starvation, social inequality, wars, genocide, pandemics, environmental degradation, and lack of development are serious problems we have to come across in our planet. Clear it is that capitalism couldn't bring the answers we need in order to tackle them. In fact, many of these problems, if not intensified by capitalism, are created by it. That means we are in urgent need for new answers, new models to think, new alternatives, new economic and social models. Not by chance, all heads now turn to China as something really new goes on there. The so-called socialism with Chinese characteristics has a lot to teach the world in terms of problem solving and formidable capacity of realization by the state. After a century of humiliation and imperialist aggression, in 1949 the new China finally rose. With time and patience, this fantastic nation establishes its goals and meets them. Development, economic growth, and social justice are some domestic achievements, and now China has the opportunity to expand them. China is bound to a great future now. It's expected to become world's #1 economy by 2030, if not before that. In 2049, China wants to be established as a developed nation. At present, its middle class is now 400 million people. Over the last 40 years, since the reforms, China has lifted 800 million people above the poverty line. It's an unheard of accomplishment in the history of humankind. Nevertheless, China won't achieve any bright future in a sick world. Wars and pandemics, for example, have been disruptive for China's goals. China wants to do trade with the world, so it needs the stability and peace. And above all, China has a particular understanding of the world, which highly differs from that of Western countries. China sees humankind as a community with a shared future. That makes a big difference because it's a systemic perspective. Hence, China is the great power that proposes universal solutions for global problems. During the pandemic of COVID-19, which lasted from 2020 to 2023, China puts this conception into practice. It has made vaccines, masks, equipments for individual protection, medicines, scientific discoveries, all available to the world as universal public goods. With facts and actions, China demonstrated how it works towards the construction of this shared destiny. Those are examples of how China promotes peace and stability, but another key for this lies in China's history. China has become a global power without colonizing other countries, without invading them, without resorting to imperialism. China already is a global leader, but not a hegemonic one. The rise of China is a pacific rise. China takes part in the construction of a multipolar world in terms of power, more stable, just, and balanced. China has no intention to interfere in other countries' internal affairs or to impose its way of life on others. China respects other countries' sovereignty and appreciates their internal stability as well. In conflict situations, China is a well-established and reputable mediator. At present, it has the potential of helping more. It can do a lot for peace between Russia and the NATO, or work for ceasefire in Palestine. A lot of progress has been achieved in the Middle East thanks to China, although this potential is still not fully explored. China always favors negotiation tables over armed conflict. Another factor for stability is that China works at a gradual pace. Every change is first tested in a controlled environment. If successful, the experience is replicated to other places. One example is the special economic zones right in the beginning of the 1980s, of the reforms and opening. China tends to be that cautious, including internationally. Besides, China fights political extremism and possible points of instability. For example, over the last decade, the Western countries have experienced the rise of far-right, fascist movements, much benefited by social media, with fake news being produced and distributed in an industrial scale. State coups are planned and instability is fostered by external agents. In those places, democracy is at stake. This doesn't happen in China, though, as media are regulated and the political system is stable and consolidated. Another reason why China champions global peace is that China makes all international fora more democratic. Not only the United Nations as a whole, but also its subdivisions, such as the UNESCO, the World Health Organization, and others. China offers them financial support, of course, but the most important is that China's behavior is collaborative, cooperative, hence more democratic. It contributes for equity of participation of the countries. Moreover, China is part of multilateral organizations such as G20, the China CELAC Forum, which involves the Latin American countries, and the Macau Forum, which involves the Portuguese-speaking countries. Those are powerful mechanisms of interaction and cooperation. China is a good friend of African, Asian, and Latin American countries. China realized very soon that the only way to prosper was to associate with developing countries. This is an early realization, as early as the 1950s. It was had by Prime Minister Zhou Enlai at the Bandung Conference in 1955. Now, names have changed. Now we're talking about developing world or developing countries, and more recently, the Global South. China is a developing country and associates with the counterparts. As we said, China contributes to the building of a multipolar world. That means a world in which power is distributed more fairly. Well, my address wouldn't be complete here if I didn't mention the BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative. The term BRICS was initially coined in 2001 by Jim O'Neill, an economist from the Goldman Sachs. He selected a group of countries expected to be the top 4 economies in the world by 2050. Brazil, Russia, India, and China were in the initial list, but other names have been added to the acronym. South Africa entered in 2010, and the BRICS Plus are now adding other states such as Egypt, the United Emirates, Ethiopia, Iran, and other inclusions are under negotiation. Although this group is not official, many agreements and cooperation treaties have been secured. Friendship is reinforced, and China, as a founding member, plays an active role in the group. As it's not official, the group hardly meets its potential. Officializing the BRICS would mean a lot in terms of global peace, stability, development, and economic growth. In my view, it's an urgent and so much needed step to take. Now about the Belt and Road Initiative. Created in 2013, it's the present-day foreign policy of China. It's inspired by the ancient Silk Road, or Silk Roads, as it was actually a road system. First opened in the 2nd century of our era, for hundreds of years this network of roads interconnected the Eurasia region, making people, flora, fauna, products, religions, arts, inventions, and ideas circulate. This adventurous spirit of trade, friendship, and cultural contact is what they want to bring up now. The policy always involves a bilateral agreement. Two countries then decide to go further in their connection. The policy predicts 5 connectivities. 1. Policy coordination. 2. Infrastructure connectivity. 3. Unimpeded trade. 4. Financial integration. 5. People-to-people exchange. Policy coordination. This is when the two countries sit and negotiate the best conditions for them. They want to create a win-win deal. Differently from other international agencies, the Belt and Road Initiative makes no imposition of conditions on its partner. The two countries don't have to be ideologically aligned or to liberalize their economies, for example. But in any case, this has to be a thorough negotiation. Infrastructure connectivity. Perhaps this is the main connectivity or the flagship one. Ports, airports, roads, railways, vehicles, products and services to better cater to the needs of trade and make it smooth. Of course, now all is done having sustainable development and green economy as guiding principles. This is a crucial point because once infrastructure is connected, all other integrations and connectivities follow suit. This is an irreversible process at some point. For example, once two countries share roads, flight, and internet connections, their cultural exchange will surely increase. Unimpeded trade. Upon negotiation, here, both countries can lift trade barriers and make bilateral deals more worthwhile. Financial integration. The involved countries don't have to depend on US dollars to do trade, for example. They can trade using their own currencies or even create new ones for the sake of their trade. This will make transactions agile and flexible, and not so much influenced by external conditions. And at last, the people-to-people exchange. Audiovisual production, like TV, films, songs, games, press, art production, co-production and circulation, as well as tourism, scholarships, and academic exchange, all can be beneficial for the countries involved. They increase cultural contact, friendship, interdependence, and give the countries the opportunity to communicate directly without mediators. So, they can give their versions of the facts, and they can build and enhance their soft power. Besides, it's an opportunity to diversify their relations, going far beyond trade. In spite of all benefits that cultural exchange can provide, this is still an underexplored area. This is so true for China, which still faces a lot of prejudice on the Western media. For example, xenophobia has increased since the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially since China has great economic prospects. Therefore, it has to work hard to build its own narrative and create more opportunities to give its own versions of the facts. Well, as a conclusion, all these facts just support that China has a fundamental role as an emerging protagonist in the promotion of global peace and stability, and has all the means to do so. Socialism with Chinese characteristics is a new model, a viable alternative to old and exhausted models which have led us to environmental, social, economic, and political crises. It's a liberation from models imposed by the global north. China's rise is a pacific one, stemming from a process of modernization which is peaceful, systemic, efficient, and equitative. China has demonstrated that it follows these principles internationally as well. This country democratizes international environment. And now, a last question. What kind of politics does the world need now? The me first politics or the vision of humankind as a community of shared destiny? Here is for our reflection. And finally, the present times have reminded me of the phrase, socialism or barbarism. This comes to my mind for two reasons. One, for the complexity of the challenges we are facing on this depleted planet. And two, for China's bringing up a new model of thinking. Thank you very much.